Welcome to this edition of Ritter's Rant. Today, I'd like to talk about negotiations. Um, right now, the main framework of negotiations that's being bandied about on the internet, on X and Telegram, um, is Donald Trump's apparent desire now to be a broker for renewed negotiations between Israel and Iran to resolve um, the nuclear crisis that seems to be at the root of the current war. Um, this is an interesting development, given just the fact that a few days ago Donald Trump was bragging about how he was complicit with Israel in this surprise attack, this Pearl Harbor type event. Where Israel launched an attack against Iran's nuclear infrastructure, decapitation strike against the Iranian leadership. Um, and Trump, said they killed the Iranian negotiating team that I was dealing with. And he said it as if this is Iran's fault. I want to remind everybody that the day that Israel launched its Pearl Harbor attack on Iran, the Iranians were preparing for the sixth round of negotiations with Donald Trump's administration in Qatar, where they were supposed to finalize an agreement. Shamkhani, one of the Iranian negotiators, a senior advisor to the Iranian supreme leader, was killed in this Israeli attack. And Shamkhani had just finished doing an interview where he said, "We are ready to accept 3.7% enrichment. That is enrichment that's only needed for production of nuclear fuel. We are ready to accept inspections. We are ready to accept limitations, to sign an agreement that says no nuclear weapons." They were ready to do everything that was necessary to resolve this issue. And they were targeted by Israel and killed with the approval of Donald Trump, who now wants to resume negotiations. Um, the only, I guess, bright light in all of this is that I think there's a growing recognition that Donald Trump's administration no longer has any credibility. I mean, who would want to negotiate with a side that sets you up to be killed? So Donald Trump has hinted that Russian President Vladimir Putin may, in fact, step in and serve as the mediator for any potential negotiation between Israel and Iran. But what are they going to be negotiating about? Donald Trump insists on zero enrichment. Do you really think that Iran, having been attacked by Israel and now launching effective retaliation attacks, is going to roll over and play dead and surrender? No, this will be a completely different kind of negotiation, one that will have different parameters and different outcomes, if indeed it happens at all. But one of the major problems, of course, is the United States. It's not just Iran that we've played around and perverted the term negotiation. Look what we've done with Ukraine, where we've prevented the Russians from working with us, working with NATO, working with Europe, and working with the Ukrainians to, first of all, prevent a conflict. And then once the conflict began, to resolve the conflict. We've been unreliable as a negotiating facilitator, mediator, and participant when it comes to resolving the conflict in Ukraine. We can't be trusted. We simply can't be trusted. And this is, again, highly problematic when it comes to, how do we prevent wars from being dragged to their inevitable conclusion. I mean, that means inevitable conclusion means more fighting, more dying, more death, more destruction. What you need to find is a diplomatic off ramp. And because of Donald Trump, the United States is no longer seen as somebody who can provide this diplomatic off ramp. Instead, we're not the solution, we're the problem. And now we have to address what that means to be the problem, because we have even larger issues than conflict in Ukraine and conflict between Iran and Israel. We have a nuclear arms treaty, the New START treaty, that expires in February of 2026. And when this treaty expires, there is no longer a treaty vehicle that puts constraints on the nuclear arsenals of either the United States or Russia. We need to negotiate either an extension of this treaty or a new treaty vehicle. But we can't do that because the United States has shown itself to be uh, an unreliable negotiating partner. Now, we can blame Donald Trump for the current manifestation of this, but he did inherit a very difficult situation from the Biden administration. As the Russians have said, how can we negotiate about controls, limitations on our strategic nuclear deterrence force at the same time the United States has embraced a policy of seeking the strategic defeat of Russia? The one thing that guarantees that Russia will never be strategically defeated is its strategic nuclear deterrence force. So how could Russia, at a time when the United States is seeking the strategic defeat of Russia, negotiate away or negotiate limitations on this force? The inconsistency of the American position, of the American posture, is manifest. And now, if the United States said, "Hey, Russia, we'd like to get serious about negotiating," how could Russia ever trust us? After all, they have the precedent of Ukraine and the precedent of Iran now that demonstrates without any shadow of a doubt that the United States is not only an unreliable partner, but a dishonest partner. And you can't have negotiations where one side is demonstrably dishonest. How could you trust them? So, we are at an impasse right now, a negotiation impasse. But the reality is that we can't speak of resolving these many issues, the Ukrainian issue, the Iran-Israel issue, or the strategic nuclear deterrent force issues, the arms control issue, without the participation of the United States. So how do you negotiate with an unreliable, inconsistent, and fundamentally dishonest partner?